While many SaaS categories are really seeing more of a slowdown, cybersecurity is growing tremendously. What are the real growth levers behind that?
AI accelerates a lot of the potential threat, and so we counter that with even better AI.
Teresa Anania is the Chief Customer Officer at Sophos. Sophos has over 600,000 customers and does over $1 billion in revenue.
I wait for a ticket. That to me is already a failure. We have to have always-on systems, so we create a digital journey, personalized, curated experience, even before they identify they're stuck or they need some help. It's instantaneous.
What are the core inputs they use to connect customer success activity directly to retention, expansion?
The expectations of the customer must not only be met, they must be exceeded. So then we can do an attribution model to really correlate what are those outcomes and those engagement touch points contributing to the ultimate outcome, which is retention.
Teresa, welcome to GTMnow.
Hi, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So want to cover a few things. I mean, the security space, digital transformation that you're really kind of pioneering. But first, Sophos is serving over 600,000 customers with over $1 billion in revenue. And while many SaaS categories are really seeing more of a slowdown, cybersecurity is growing tremendously. What are the real growth levers behind that?
Yeah, I think obviously AI is accelerating even the bad actor threats for our customers. And so the space is never ending. The amount of research and threat intelligence required to counter some of our businesses that we serve greatest risks, it is an infinite loop. I think AI accelerates like a lot of the potential threat that our customers face. And so we counter that with even better AI to kind of defend and make sure that we're proactively and with integrity finding as much as we can in their landscape, whether it be in the endpoints, the firewall, of course, all in between. And then we offer a service that is always on called our MDR, Managed Detection and Response Service. So look, the space is growing. The number of threats is growing. The good news is with great AI and technology and a platform like ours, we feel really solid in the security posture that we provide for our customers.
Sophos recently published the 2026 version of the Active Adversary Report. And when I was going through it, it kind of highlights the shift of more of the typical breaking in from a security perspective to logging in. So what are the biggest risks with identity-driven attacks that people should be aware of, and what should people do differently?
I'll just share what I heard in the room in our 2 regional customer advisory board meetings where we brought together some of our best and brightest customers to the table. I mean, what's keeping them up at night and what they believe are some of the most active threats. Identifying any gaps in the protection landscape is super critical, making sure all devices are identified. One of the other big areas that we work with our clients on are tight, very, very tight integrations that are very solid, regardless of what technology they're using to secure their endpoints or their firewalls. It's all really relevant. So those are the 2 biggest areas that we tend to factor in when we want to make sure there is very structured security provisions across every checkpoint that they require. Those 2 things matter a lot.
Got it. Super helpful. Those 2 things. And then something else that the report actually showed was that when attackers can actually penetrate critical systems, they can do so in about 3 to 4 hours, which is quite quick, especially considering for a lot of software companies, support, customer success teams, they operate more of like a 24-hour, 48-hour cycle oftentimes. So how do you, as a leading customer success for all of Sophos, how do you structure customer operations to respond at that crazy pace?
I mean, we have to have always on systems. And again, we have to be ahead of any of those potential threats. So we have a lot of predictive, we have a lot of preventative. Our protections are, starting at the very, very beginning. And so our response times are usually before the customer even knows there is an issue. If there is an issue and we both identify it at the same time, it's instantaneous. We have direct access with not only phone and bridges that we connect on, but there is a very rigorous research that is done real time, as well as a lot of the recommendations that might be needed to solve whatever the potential threat is. Those are happening in real time as well. But you're right, it makes for a very important customer experience at that most critical time of need. And that's what we build, and that's what we continue to provide our top customers.
For yourself, you're driving true revenue at Sophos. What are the core inputs that you use to connect customer success activity directly to retention, expansion?
So, well, there's the obvious that we really line up their engagement model to be outcome driven. So think of, this is not the reactive or relationship based customer success any longer. It's really about intentional, again, proactive, really making sure that we are building on the expectations of the customer when they made the decision to choose Sophos, for example, as their partner. Those outcomes must not only be met, they must be exceeded. So we develop a very intentional outreach, I'll call it touch point plan, that really prescriptively identifies the key moments of truth during, even deployment, certainly over their life cycle of leveraging the full platform and the capabilities, making sure, that we're doing health checks and tabletop exercises to really understand where all are the vulnerabilities, how might we help them solidify and harden that security landscape. And so then we can do an attribution model, which we have built, and I've done this a couple times in my past, to really correlate, not as much causation, but correlation. What are those outcomes and those engagement touch points contributing to the ultimate outcome, which is the big revenue driver for any company, and that is retention. We also have some leading indicators that we correlate to, which can be things like identify expansion opportunities, because as you work through, let's say, an assessment of a company's security posture, you may identify as the CSM some areas of vulnerability, some areas of weakness. And sometimes our solutions, whether they're integration capabilities or email, ITDR capabilities, they might not have, but require in order to get to the highest level of, let's say, maturity in their security practice. We will recommend those things and make sure that we're not crossing the line to a commercial relationship. We're still the trusted advisors, but making those recommendations really helps our customer understand how to just continue to mature their practice. So really, it's the revenue retention through GRR that we can correlate a lot of those touch points from onboarding through adoption to renewal, and then also an additional measure to track the NRR, the actual expansion outcomes.
That's incredible. And a very rigorous system. I think a lot of early stage companies aspire to have that kind of rigor built in, but may not have the kind of data or build out teams around it. Like, do you have any advice for earlier stage companies that want to emulate this, that are bought into the actual understanding of customer success being one of the biggest, if not the biggest, revenue driver in a business?
Yeah, I think early on, it's really important to start with what you have. And I do believe that even if your data is not perfect and you don't have like the perfect telemetry for a predictive, let's say, account health at risk type of signal, you might have things that indicate killer issues. I say that because it's a belief around the heuristic data that could actually still get you a good amount of the way to being proactive. So whether it's just asking some of your CSMs or your account managers, what are the things that really indicate a customer is tracking healthy? And what are some of the things that would show as derailers and where the customer might be on an unhealthy track? And really just taking campaign approached outreaches towards those particular killer issues is a way to get started. I think another thing is just, automation is to me a good way to increase efficiency around a practice or a process that already works. So it's great to start this kind of engagement even before you might have a fully tooled and operationalized model. And that way you can work out some of the kinks and identify what are the best moments of truth that we should engage with our customers, whether it be during that onboarding experience, whether it be during their use of the platform to, continue to evolve and uptake all of the great advancements and updates that were made to that technology. And then ultimately in the renewal experience, and actually we have extended the engagement model to include win back. So I
Oh,
think a
interesting.
great practice, we use Cleverbridge for this automation portion of the life cycle phase, and we're going to move it earlier in the life cycle to prior to renewal. But even during the post renewal phase, letting our customers know that you are going to be losing your protections. We give a short grace period, as many B2B SaaS companies do. But at some point, when customers have not renewed their contract, but may still think they have the protections of the cyber technology we offer, we want to give them the benefit of knowing, like, your endpoint or your firewall may not be protected as you think. So, renew now. And there's a nice Salesforce link to our CRM where they have the option to just renew with the push of the button. And we track all of that. And again, that correlates to that success motion. Also think of it like a good metric of license compliance and enforcement, because we just don't want customers. It's not about even the contract and the revenue that we're missing. That's a part of it. But mainly, we don't want our customers to be operating when they're unprotected and exposed. So that whole journey to me can be nascent to start and then automated as you get more advanced. And, we're at the point now where we have operationalized calls to action through our CRM tool. We have identified insights in a portfolio that when you automate, you can widen the ratios of your CSM to account coverage, as long as you're providing that contextualized insight on who to call next and why and what is the play. That's when you're starting to achieve scale. And it's important as part of the evolution, but it's, to me, crawl, walk, run. You got to start somewhere.
A quick pause for a company we're a huge fan of. Because if you run go-to-market, you already know the problem. Your data lives everywhere. Spreadsheets, CRMs, sales calls, ad platforms. Yet you're still guessing what to do next. HockeyStack is the AI platform for modern go-to-market teams. It unifies all your sales and marketing data into a single system of action. Built-in AI agents help teams prospect the right accounts, improve conversions, close and expand deals, and scale what works. That's why teams like RingCentral, Outreach, Active Campaign, and Fortune 100 companies rely on HockeyStack to eliminate wasted spend, take better decisions, and make space to think. Learn more at hockeystack.com. That's HOCKEYSTACK.com. You're leading go-to-market at Sophos, but you've also led go-to-market at some incredible companies before that, like On24 and Zendesk and Autodesk. Like, when you think just broadly from the go-to-market side, looking 3 to 5 years out, what does the modern go-to-market look like for software companies? And what's forcing this change? Because we're in a period of huge change.
I agree with you. I think AI is changing the game. I mean, we have taken a very high volume business, whether that be at Sophos, in my prior life at Zendesk. I mean, we've had hundreds of thousands of customers that we need to transact at that critical final mile to secure and, what we've earned in a renewal contract. So, I see the evolution being a way to scale with a digital motion that allows for self-serve from the beginning of the customer journey all the way through to that renewal event and win back, as I described. And I think that self-serve experience is powered by AI. So think of it like all of the telemetry that helps us know when we're going to get a high ticket driver on our support side. Why wait for a ticket? That to me is already a failure, because the customer has to come inbound asking a question that clearly was not intuitive upstream. So instead of waiting for that, we're proactively identifying here's where many other customers like you have gotten stuck. And so we can create a digital journey. Think of it like a learning path that allows the customer to have a very personalized, curated experience at the time, even before they identify that they're stuck or they need some help. And this helps us free up our human capacity to really be focused on the more advanced needs of our customer. And so you get not only like a more engaging position when you're hiring for these critical roles because they know 80% of their time they're going to be engaging in high value customer engagements, but you also get a great customer experience because for the low effort things, they don't want to have to contact in. They don't want to have to come inbound. They want to have great curated learning resources, kind of guided experiences that allow them to self-serve. So I think what I'm seeing evolve is just a way to scale. I think in go-to-market orchestration, in the selling RACI and what our sales team is responsible for, and the success, renewals, and even support and PS RACI, super critical. I think AI is allowing us to start blurring the lines of having like our customers have to know our functional org design and instead like truly allow us to surface the right resource at the right time, depending on where that customer is in the life cycle. So we have a ton of data. Probably a lot of us out there know what I'm talking about when we say there's a ton of data, but it's making it actionable and assuring that that data is basically taking the customer just along that journey at their pace, not at some time-based pace that is arbitrary, not at some vanilla one-size-fits approach, but rather in a way where we know like where the customer is. We have good data that tells us benchmarking where other customers like them are and just helping them move along that maturity curve, not only to basically unlock more platform or other capabilities, but also to benchmark them against what is best in class in the industry. And that is high value. And assuring that CSM, support are all driving revenue, not just some relationship metric or account health or adoption depth, but rather attributed, but even have a direct bridge of all those support engagements directly to a revenue growth target, I think is the future because we all want to get out of the world of a cost overlay organization or one that is just grounded in, this is my swim lane and this is all I do, and rather have each of our employees really feel like they have a part in that overall retention and growth goal.
And I have to say, I haven't seen this done extremely well at scale for many companies. I think what you're doing around creating more bespoke engagement and proactive engagement for customers is truly the future, but it's a lot more challenging to operationalize.
It's hard. Mm-hmm. It is all about crawl, walk, run. Developing a roadmap of what data do we have that can inform a more personalized experience, and then how do we leverage AI, third-party data, internal, even unstructured data to actually augment that and provide that full customer context so that when we're engaging, even if it's digitally, they feel, first of all, there's an escape valve. They can raise their hand and say, I want a human, okay? But also, before that is even necessary, really take them into a more guided path. Our customers that have enjoyed this kind of experience give us very high marks on CSAT, TNPS, transactional NPS. So we know that it is, when you wire it and use AI to optimize it, we know that it has a good effect internally on employee engagement. People enjoy their jobs more, and that extends to a better customer experience as well.
And something you said around the org chart not feeling it made me think of the CMO of Figma, Sheila Vashi. She said the number one thing that they do is they ensure the customer does not feel or know their org chart because it's truly not.
That's right.
Well, I love the approach. I think there's a long way to go, and most companies could try to emulate that because right now it does feel like it's still a little bit of the either time bound or more of just the play. So it's sequencing of drip for time or usage based. And it's generic, like you said, vanilla across the kind of landscape. So I'm excited to see more companies try and adopt this much more personalized approach like Sophos is.
Exactly.
And many leaders try to go more digital and it can be overwhelming. Like, how did you think about that journey? How would you kind of break it down into more practical stages of going like legacy manual to more hybrid and then digital without disrupting, obviously, the core kind of business and revenue?
Yeah, I mean, I am a very pragmatic type leader on this front. It depends on company size. So I'll just speak to all of us that have built these types of organizations and processes from scratch. Like, start with the basics. Start with, what is my upcoming top renewal base? Like, how can I make an impact, not just me, but exec sponsors and or our CSMs that, we might be starting up? How can we make an impact for very quick wins? So to me, it's about looking at that existing book of business, identifying where some of the risk could be in that upcoming ATR or available to renew, and then working backwards, right? So even in my digital journey design, we started up a customer journey office. Think of that as like the hub of a hub and spoke model where, this takes stakeholders around the company, product, marketing, sales, certainly support, success, and really assuring everyone understands their part in the customer journey. So we didn't start at the beginning because to me, starting with an onboarding experience when you already are, let's say, inheriting a certain amount of install base feels like you're missing an opportunity to have a very near-term impact. So I start at the end. I started the win back and renewal experience and really identify maybe 60 days, 90 days before the renewal, depending on how large we're talking. I'm mostly referring to the volume space, but if it's enterprise and high dollar ACV, you're going to start a lot earlier, like really taking stock, doing an audit of like, what kind of value have they received? Have we done our job to either meet or exceed the expectation of the value that was sold to them in the decision they made to join, X company or buy X company? And then like a red account program can devolve from that. So once just jump into gear of like, what are the risk factors? How do we de-risk this account? It starts to build your at-risk playbooks. So then you kind of work backwards and you're like, okay, it's not good to be reactive and jumping in towards the very tail end of that renewal. How do we get earlier into the install base that are just really starting to adopt and, starting to think about like, is this relationship working for me? And is this company one I see as a strategic partner for our long term? And those kinds of outreaches and engagements can really lead to playbooks that just help customers move along that maturity curve and get that value delivery. I think one of the key elements in that phase is to articulate and even size ROI. I think that is a huge missing factor. Many of our, I'll say, colleagues, they think about engagement as like a checklist rather than outcome based. And I think we have to be looking at it through the eyes of the customer. What is the value or the proxy that we can use for the value the customer is getting, and how are we showing up? And then you move to like the earlier phases and you can start with like an amazing onboarding experience. Now, I say that, but one of the very first things I do is look at churn culprits, right? That's at the very end. Like, why are we losing? And everything I just shared about working backwards should be from that lens. So that if, let's say, onboarding and their implementation deployment is one of the bigger churn culprits, that is a place you can start. Even though it's earlier on, if it's going to kind of de-risk and continue to drive health in the base, that's where to start. So it's segmentation. Not like when you're in a pyramid like I am, we have top of the book enterprise and we have a long tail, and both matter. We don't have an 80-20. It's like 50-50. So we have to address both, and the churn culprits in each of those segments are very different. So it's basically, hearing why we lose, working from the end of that renewal cycle backwards, and really starting to operationalize it with a crawl, walk, run mentality, because a lot can be accomplished even with a few people devoted to the practice.
A quick pause. If you run outbound sales, this is big news. Most reps are bouncing between 5 different tools just to send one email. But there's a better way. Nooks is the AI agent workspace built for intelligent outbound, where AI agents and your reps work together in one place. Nooks' AI sequencing handles the busy work, finding prospects, writing outreach, knowing who to contact and when, so your team can focus on actual conversations. If you're evaluating your outbound stack or renewing legacy tools, check out nooks.ai. That's nooks.ai. Speaking of sequential and sequencing, how do you think about segments specifically? So more of the segmentation between SMBs and mid-markets or enterprise or even sales assist, like the motion itself. So you're not just trying to boil the ocean, because there's so many possibilities there, it feels like.
I mean, I start with data. I start with, again, where is our risk drags or our culprits in our renewal rates? Where is the volume and the rate making the biggest drag on our numbers? And then taking that and making sure that our coverage model is addressing the high value, high risk areas so that you can get a pretty good return on that investment pretty quickly. Segmentation to me, is meant to be flexible. I feel I wrote a white paper on this at one point with Gartner called dynamic segmentation. I think too many of us think of it with these very arbitrary hard lines on spend, let's say ACV size, the average contract value size, and that's very arbitrary. I think what we need to do is be looking at a 2x2 of not only size of spend, but risk and also potential spend. So some of the attributes that could help you grow that account, even if it falls below a particular threshold, may still need a higher touch or medium touch experience by a CSM. So having enough agility and flexibility in your segmentation to allow for that dynamic, I wouldn't say monthly, but every few months, we're looking at who are the customers that are just at risk, high spend, we need to protect and maintain. Who are the customers that are, high spend, but have high growth potential? And then that's your really sweet spot. And then where are some of the medium spends, but there's high risk and, lower effort to solve it? And what are some of the low spend, low risk? You can digitize all of that. So I think starting with segmentation of where your customers fall, by the way, it's a great proxy for matching customer needs like for like, because their needs in those quadrants are fairly similar. So your playbooks and your touch point plan can follow suit. And even your assignment of your CSMs can match those quadrants, because some CSMs are better at risk and prevention and others are better at growth. So that really lends itself to then, okay, how are we going to segment our high touch, our medium touch, and then everything else is, tech touch. Although we do tech touch across the base, but some customers only get tech touch. So you want to be super thoughtful about that and then be able to identify ratios that are best in class or benchmark levels so you don't overload your CSMs. And then you could flex that up or down depending on your level of automation. So when it's pretty nascent, they might not be able to handle as many accounts. When it is pretty automated and powered by AI for contextualizing and higher productivity, you might be able to get on the high touch 15 accounts, even though over $1 million each. In the medium, touch area, more like 30 to 40 accounts. And then tech touch is always going to be your way to have a default experience that is digital first, but then allow for human interventions and hand raising so that you're always aware that no matter how great your digital experience is, you may need to deploy some humans to actually assure, you're mitigating the risk and serving that cohort customer need.
Is that primarily how you organize customer success folks at Sophos, is actually by quadrant around kind of quality, if you will, of customer as opposed to segment like SMB and enterprise?
Yeah, I think market segments are a misnomer in success coverage, depending on how you define market segments. Most companies I work with and I've been part of segment for sales based on company size or potential footprint where our technology could play, but necessarily may not yet, right?
Yes.
So I look at that as being almost the high bar when you take the footprint you could have in that company and multiply it by your average contract value as the potential spend. And then I take the current spend as grounding us in, let's be practical here. If I have a $10,000 ACV customer right now that even could be a $300,000 customer, I can't give them a high touch experience. It's just not, a good ROI play unless you have unlimited CSM resources. So there's certain thresholds where, to me, you start digital regardless of potential spend. But then those customers that are kind of in the middle ground where there's high growth, we absolutely will provide a medium or high touch experience for that customer. And then after 3 months, if we don't, or 6 months, we don't see that playing out, and that customer is either not engaging or their needs clearly indicate that, it's more than what a CSM, let's say the CSM is more than they need, then we'll, demote, promote customers in and out of that dynamic segment. No, look, we have not fully operationalized this yet at Sophos, but I have done this in my past at Zendesk, and we are working towards a more dynamic segmentation model and using our best CSMs for I told you that green space where, it's high growth, high spend, and just, making sure you're trying to match customer needs with who you deploy as your CSM, and then also how much they can cover. What does that engagement model look like? That's where the touch point plan, the outcome-based metrics of that engagement all come into play.
You've also talked about the humble dent hire. Tell me a little bit about this. Yes. It's a tongue twister. But why is that kind of specific mix of traits essential? Love to hear a little bit more about it.
I think it's a great combination. That was a Zendesk term, and I fully embrace it, and I've used it now, and I just constantly reference it. It is the perfect combination of being humble enough to be able to acknowledge customers' empathy, have recognition that we don't do everything great all the time, even internally with your employees, but also externally with your customers. We're not, perfect, and we will have flaws. And then having the confidence that you couple with that to be able to, be very clear in your value proposition, very clear in value for price, making sure you're delivering on that value and recognizing the differentiators that you have against the competitor and other ways the customer may spend their money, like the use of their budget today for AI versus some of the other technology that is so imperative. So it's the combination of skills that I think every human being in my organization should have. It's that customer empathy, that humbleness, being able to admit when you've made a mistake, because we are not going to be perfect. And then the confidence to really be able to position, have a data-driven point of view, have that ROI articulation for value delivery so that we're not just going in and expecting to earn the customer's business, but that we actually earn it. We don't just expect it. I think that's the combination of a great set of behaviors that drive the right outcomes.
So anyone looking to join your team should definitely read a little bit more about the humble dent hire. We'll give them a little tip here.
Thank you.
And I mean, across all your experience, Teresa, I'm curious what your biggest learnings have been about the customer, reflections now from accumulating experience.
What I've learned is that, in order to earn that business with our customers each and every day, I always go back to the 5-to-1 scorecard. Again, you can read up on this. It's real research that's been done about 10 years ago in relationships. Again, nothing is ever perfect, but over the course of a time period, making sure we have 5 great experiences to 1 bad one, 90% shows that relationship or that customer relationship will continue. If you have the opposite or your scorecard is imbalanced, then, you're probably not going to earn the trusted advisor status of a long-term strategic relationship. So I'm really big on listening and learning. I'm really big on recognizing where we need improvement, listening to the customers, making sure they feel heard, responsiveness. Half of my customers tell us that, if they just hear back and we are actioning on their questions or challenges or things they think could be better, that solves half the battle. It's not even always addressing everything they ask for. It's just being responsive and making sure that they feel heard. So I think that just some of the things I've learned over my years.
At the end of the day, customers want to be seen and heard. And if you're responsive, which is a great process, that is, I mean, a huge, huge part of it, on top of obviously solving for the specificities.
Yeah, one like pragmatic example of that is all the surveying that we do. We do a lot. We do try to watch that we're not over surveying, but I'm a big believer in T or transactional NPS and then also relationship based NPS. Like you must have your inner and outer loops for actioning that feedback before you ever deploy. So like if you don't have a method to very quickly, let's say on, a support interaction, something goes awry, those managers have to be able to get that immediate feedback and be able to action that with the customer. It could be a digital and human kind of inner loop engagement, but still to let the customer know we are taking this feedback seriously, and obviously have it with patterning inform your strategy, your rubric, the way you want to engage. Same with the outer loop. What I mean by that is just the actions that might need to happen across the organization. I mean, let's put it straight. CX becomes a hub in that hub and spoke world for identifying and being the voice of the customer, even though much of their feedback has to do with other organizations, not CX alone. It is an all company play. So being able to action that, we have like a monthly meeting where we review all the insights that are coming in through especially the relationship-based NPS, where there's a lot of verbatim, there's a lot of, scoring and detractor information and or promoter information that is basically their experience outside of CX. It's product related. It might be a renewal experience. It might be a sales piece of feedback. So how do we as an organization set up an analytics engine that is constantly providing insights to the rest of the business to be able to action that? And again, those actionability stand-up meetings are, to me, essential. Even when you start small with some surveying, getting that customer feedback and actioning on it at the same time really helps our customers understand that we take your feedback seriously.
Who's in that meeting? Is that customer success or is that cross go-to-market functions?
It's even beyond go-to-market. It's cross-organizational. So we'll have our product management team at the table, like a leader. We'll have marketing at the table. We will have head of sales, head of, my organizations. And then we all work together to really identify the actionability and what we're going to do next. And this is our way to, again, make retention an all company play. Everyone says that, but do they really set up a programmatic way that, by the way, is not just CX said or, a sales rep on the floor said? This is customer voice. So it is invaluable. And the stakeholders around the table value it because they otherwise would have to go find this insight information on their own. So we set it up as a practice inside of CX, but it is truly cross-organizational.
I think what we're seeing a lot of companies trying to transition to is a lot more centralized data and information sharing across the customer to every single node and spoke of the company itself.
That's exactly right.
And then on the security side, Teresa, what are some of one everyday behavior that people are doing either on their phone or email that you think is quietly kind of leaving the door open for risk?
I think every time we're clicking on suspicious links, and I mean, we've all gotten them, right? They look so good now. They are disguised by AI. They're no longer with typos and, things that before my kids, anyone would say, oh, that's a scam. Now they're getting in through what looks like a very legitimate email. So I think really having strong protections. I also think governance around AI. our customers and even myself as a big departmental AI, driver, like we're doing things in departments. We're not just waiting on IT through their very, rigorous governance process. We're wanting to be agile. And I think every company wants to unleash the capabilities of whether it be, Claude bots or Chat GPT or any of the great solutions out there. But how do we do that with like a governance structure that provides guardrails, that lets our employees know, like, hey, we want you to go at it, to continue to innovate, but we also need to have some security and recognition that this cannot be ungoverned. So I think those two areas, like we really have to be strong on the email side. We've rolled out some really great new email capabilities that customers are raving about, that just give them additional insights, give actually the end users additional insights that help identify when something looks suspicious. And I think if we can get better there and then provide more governance around AI to keep it extremely agile and self-serve, you do not want to create just a hierarchy to deploy, but still, put in the guardrails. That's very important.
Teresa, any favorite books from your career overall or things that have inspired you?
I mean, I love The Table Group and Pat Lencioni, if I'm saying that properly, The Advantage, and always been a big From Good to Great fan. I love that
A
book.
classic.
There's just so many great books that I've learned from. Also, How to Influence, that's a key one. The Dale Carnegie book, like from my old stomping grounds in Pittsburgh, the CMU organization and what he started there. And those are just some of my favorites. I'm a big reader, and I think actually just joining as many great summits as you can enjoy, even remotely, hearing from other industry leaders and thought leaders, that has been a big part of my learning fast and failing fast and knowing some of the, aha moments that others have had and how to either avoid them or kind of reach that point faster with some of what you learn from the space. I think those are all the best ways to stay on top of everything that is foundationally still relevant, like some of the books I cited, but then also the what's coming, some of the great new information in AI, like to self-learn that, I think is super important. You can't just wait, for someone to roll it out on a silver platter anymore. You have to self-learn.
Curiosity, I think, in the hiring process is definitely a necessity to be able to keep up with that pace right now. Brilliant. Well, Teresa, this has been fantastic. We really appreciate the time. Appreciate you coming on the show. And we will catch you next time.
Well, thank you so much. It was great.